So thanks so much, everybody, for joining us for today's webinar. Today, we're focusing on how a VMware TAM can maximize value and accelerate digital transformation in your organizations. I'm Adam Scorzafava, AVP for Marketing and Communications here at Edge. And I want to just sort of set the table a bit and provide some background on who Edge is for those who may not know us as well, and why we're here kind of helping to put on this session today. So Edge is a nonprofit member-based research and education network and a technology consortium. We were founded by the New Jersey President's Council for Higher Education. Back around the turn of the century, the higher ed presidents in New Jersey got together and essentially realized the internet wasn't going anywhere and that they needed a service provider, a partner, a consortium to really help them and their institutions succeed in that digital world. And so that's what Edge was formed to do. That's the heritage of Edge really in higher education. But in the years since, we've grown to be so much more to a much wider and more diverse community of organizations. So higher ed is still sort of the backbone and heritage of what we do, but we work with K-12 school districts, state and local government entities, libraries, healthcare organizations, and other nonprofits. Really anybody that has a public serving mission, anybody that receives public funding. We exist to help them do better in the technology space, whatever that means to them and their constituents. Edge is here to accelerate that and to enhance digital transformation. So a few of the ways that we put that into action, when I mentioned we were formed back around the turn of the century, we were initially formed to build a network around the state of New Jersey. That network has grown regionally. We now have points of presence in Pennsylvania, in New York, and we can get you down to Ashburn, Virginia for cloud connectivity as well, which is really exciting, great developments there. And the network that we provide really has lots of feature add benefits beyond what a typical internet service provider would offer to a public organization. And so we really call ourselves an NSP, a network service provider, where we have all these sort of added features and benefits that are right there bundled into the network connectivity. In the higher ed space, we also help to accelerate research and discovery with a technology-based research framework that we call Edge Discovery. Edge Market is a strategic and informed consortium procurement arm of Edge. We operate under a few different legal authorities, statutory authorities granted by the state of New Jersey. One makes us a lead agency, and the other enables us to operate a full-blown procurement co-op. And so we're able to form partnerships, enter into contracts, put out RFPs, and have the results of those procurements be widely available throughout our entire consortium network, and in the case of the co-op, across the country. One of those agreements based on our lead agency status here in New Jersey is the genesis of our partnership with VMware, and that's how we get folks access to the TAM program under Edge's ELA and VMware Cooperative Purchasing Agreement. We have, significantly discounted access to the technical account manager services that VMware offers, which really, really can help. And you'll hear more about that from the TAM team who's joined us on the call today, but can really help to secure, accelerate, roadmap, all the really cool things that you're already doing with VMware and sort of take that to the next level in terms of performance and maturity. And so that's all kind of under the foundation of our procurement abilities here in the state of New Jersey and then more broadly across the country. We also host events, networking and community building opportunities, just like what we're doing here on the web today. And then Edge offers thought leadership and solution development ourselves as a nonprofit to really help fill the gaps, essentially, where our consortium members have them. So that's in digital transformation support and the general kind of business process optimization and improvements and different things that need to happen to be ready for that transformation that needs to take place in technology. That's in areas like cybersecurity, privacy, and compliance, where it can be very difficult to identify, staff, retain, pay top of the line cybersecurity talent. We offer a virtual CISO program to be able to put in on an hourly basis cybersecurity leadership at your organizations. And then we can also bundle in things like regular assessments, vulnerability testing, penetration testing to make sure that you're in the best cybersecurity posture you can be. Cloud strategy, and often that very much aligns with a VMware and virtualization strategy. And then digital teaching and learning, where we can help to accelerate the delivery of online learning programs, hybrid, high flex learning programs, really integrating technology with the pedagogical approach and helping on the instructional design and professional development fronts as well. So we really come in and try to, like I said, fill gaps for our members where they need a bit of assistance to sort of get them over the line. But we can't be everything to everyone, and we know that. And so that's where the partnerships that we've developed really become key. And so we're excited today to dive into one of those and dive into learning a bit about the real value that a relationship with a VMware technical account manager can bring to your VMware implementations and your technology strategy as a whole. So with that, I will pass it over to, I'll stop sharing my screen and then I'll pass it over to Cam Chan, one of the lead TAMs here that works with a few of our Edge Consortium members. So Cam, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adam. And let me just share my screen. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to talk to you about the many advantages of a multi-cloud TAM and how it can be a huge value to any organization. Thank you for taking the time into letting me show you the many benefits of a TAM. I am Cam Chan. I've been in the virtualization environment for about 20 plus years, worked for big companies like the Hartford Insurance Company, IBM, Xerox, Mass Mutual of Massachusetts. I started as a system administrator and then moved my way up to architect. And I've always been in the virtualization environment, working in VMware and working in everything that is an aspect of VMware. I have with me my great colleague, Bob Johnson. Bob, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Cam. Hey, I'm Bob Johnston. I'm a VMware TAM. I've been with VMware for 7 years now. So I've been working with a lot of customers over the years and seen a lot of things. Before that, I ran a VMware partner. I ran their EUC division. So we handled customers all over at least the east half of the United States. That was a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to talking to you today about what a TAM can do for you guys, because I think it's a great program. Back to you, Cam.
Thank you, Bob. Today, we'll be talking about what a TAM will provide for an organization, show one of the many reporting a TAM can generate. One of these reports is the TDM Insight and its great value. Then we had planned to have 2 customers to give you their experience with a TAM and how it has helped them extremely for their VMware environment. Jason from the state of Michigan, and we did have Jamal from the Milwaukee Police Department, but he had a family issue that he needed to deal with at this point. An organization knows what VMware is their solution in building their IT environment. They invest substantially into VMware, stand up a vSphere, build the structure, and then the creation of VM. Now what? How does the organization make sure it is strong and reliable structure? How can an organization maximize their investments and accelerate their time to value? Your TAM can help you keep pace with the newest and best technology. At the same time, we help keep your environments scalable, reliable, and secure according to VMware's best practice. As opportunities present themselves, your TAM can help you take advantage by applying your technology to solution business incentives. This would be like a person sitting with your IT team, being an advocate to assist and provide solution guidance to your existing implementations and accelerate knowledge. TAMs are experts in their fields and help accelerate your product knowledge. We identify security, stability, and perform gaps using various health check tools to verify the structure is operating to VMware's best practice. Since TAMs work with many customers, we have the unique ability to bring insight into how your peers operate. As your VMware advocate, your TAM, which is me, has a close connection to VMware professional services, product management, engineering, and support. As such, customer product queries, feature requests, or issues can be addressed and resolved as fast as possible. As a TAM customer, you are entitled to exclusive VMware content such as webinars and regional events. TAMs keep their customers informed about VMware products and security advisories. We can help to create plans for upgrades and security mitigation steps so you can concentrate on maintaining your environment. If there are plots for new software releases, it's the TAM customers that are usually first to test them out. VMware's largest and most successful customers have TAMs. Using the strength of the collective TAM organization, we bring insights and best practice to hone over thousands of engagements. Your TAM has a relationship with the VMware product management that helps get your product improvements that you would need to build into your upcoming releases. TAM customers have exclusive access to the VMware Customer Portal, Connection Portal. This portal provides an interactive communication link directly to your TAM and provides content available only to the VMware TAM customer. You and your TAM can use this portal to share information such as health reports, product releases, security advisories, upgrades plans, and enablement guides, and etc. Exclusively to TAM customers is additional content to VMware Skyline Advisory. Your TAM uses this to create health check reports and help you to resolve issues and mitigate risk. One of the reports is the TAM Data Insight Tools, which Bob will show us next. It provides proactive data-driven designs, guidelines, as well as industries and peer benchmarks. Your TAM can make sure that IT leadership's strategic objectives and IT projects are in line. These projects complete faster with higher rates of success. This can only be achieved by someone like your TAM that has the experience working with many customers and hundreds of projects. These are some of the examples of the objectives and some of the examples of IT projects that are within an organization. VMware has TAMs that are subject matter experts, or SMEs, across our entire product suites. If you have a problem, questions, or concerns, or want to or thinking about any of these areas and or platforms, the TAM will assist. Then bring the specific SMEs to go into deeper dive discussions to help you better understand. And these are, again, some of the examples of the platforms that VMware has to offer. I thank you for taking the time to listen to me for the numerous advantages of having a multi-cloud TAM. Now we will show you an example of one of the TAM reporting, the TDM Insight reporting. Running this type of report will have many, many benefits for your organization. Bob, you want to take it?
Yeah, you bet.
Sharing.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, let me share my screen. All right, let me know when you can see I think I've actually got this in Acrobat Reader so I don't mess up the PowerPoint. Let me know when it shows up. Can you
I can
guys
see
see
your
the?
screen now.
I can see it, Bob.
All right, good. So this is an actual report that I ran for a customer several years ago. Of course, we sanitized the data, so it doesn't reveal any information about them, but it is actual data, so it's real. This is actually what we do. I think the metrics and the graphics have been updated since we did this, but the idea is the same. Uh, a customer spends a lot of money on VMware software and infrastructure. The TAM's job is to make sure that you get the most out of it. So you want to get your return on investment. You want it to work for you. We want to make sure that it does what it's supposed to, and it's got to be reliable. One of the tools we use, this tool is our TDM Insights. That stands for TAM Data Manager. That's a tool the TAM's developed. We made it ourselves. We can pull data from your environment. You actually pull the data for us, and then we can analyze it and put it into usable information. And this is just one sample of what we do with customers. We do a lot more. But let's look at some of the data here. Now, a lot of this stuff is going to be, there's a lot of data. So some of it is going to be a hot button for some people, some of it won't. Everybody likes to see different things or needs different things. So there's a lot of stuff in this report. Not all of it will be of interest, but some of it might be. And if you have any questions, just feel free to butt in and ask, because that's what we're here for, is to work together and get information across. So if you have a question, be sure and ask it. You see here, this is just a kind of a high level overview of an environment. Management likes these high level overviews. They can see what's going on. We do it over time. As you see down at the bottom here, we can change the time scale so that we can analyze what happens over time. But you can see that their number of vCenters are climbing, the trends are up or down. They don't use SRM, so that's just kind of flatlined. So there's just interesting stuff here that a manager might want to look at. And then the data gets deeper as we go. If we look at the next screen, we have some repetitive information. This you probably remember from the previous screen, but it's also got some different stuff with it. And that's in case you want some different information, but this is still useful. We keep this on a lot of the pages. Some of the information here, you can see that over time, when we take this data, some customers like to do it every month. This customer, once they started using it, they just had to have it. They just loved this information, and management ate it up. The guys that worked on the systems kind of enjoyed having it because they could see it grow. And if you look, where was it? It might have been on this last page. An interesting thing here is they have host to admin ratio and VM to admin ratio. And that's a great way with the TAM program. You can see if you're kind of in the ballpark of how many people you have to the size of environment you have. So if these guys only had 5 admins, but they had the same size environment, you might think they're running a little hot compared to what other people might be doing. So we could actually kind of compare your environment to people to organizations that are similar, and see if are you working too hard? Do you not have enough people? Are you not using the software like you should to be efficient? We can tell a lot of things, but this gave them a snapshot over time of what was going on over the different months and what their memory and all that kind of stuff is doing. And I'm just going to go through these really quick so you can kind of see just a general idea of what the data is. Here we see something that's handy. They've got some HAs not enabled in some of their clusters, nor is DRS. So that's something we needed to look at and find out why. Sometimes that's normal. They have it shut off. There's VoIP systems and antivirus stuff that runs that can't be moved. And sometimes that's normal, but we want to make sure. One thing that's hard to tell in your environment is EVC mode. It's hard to look and tell what mode you're in and which ones are in what mode. This kind of breaks that down and lets you know what's going on. Sometimes there's a mode out there and you've changed host and you don't need it anymore. So that, your mode should be changed or updated. It also tells us what kind of hardware they have. It's an easy, quick way to look at your hardware levels. We also have, we can tell your CPU, what CPUs you're using, and what's in the environment. It could be handy if there's a problem with a certain CPU, the different vendors. There's some other things later on that tell us when the hardware and some of the stuff is going out of support, so you can plan ahead. This particular customer really liked this chart, and I'll show it to you in a little bit later, but they used it to help make sure their capacity was okay across all their different data centers. They were scattered out all over the place. Here's some interesting information. You can see here data center 2 or DC2 has 16 hosts that are at that time we're going out of support. Actually, we're out of support, and that's why it's red. You'll also notice that up here, before this date hit, you'll see this purple took over and the blue kind of came down. Well, the blue is ESX6. And this is an old report. So 6 was on its way out. It was out of support. I was able to work with the customer and tell them, hey, man, you got to get off the 6. Let's upgrade. You're going to run out of support. So right here, we started our upgrade process, and you can see they came close to getting all their stuff upgraded, so they didn't lose support, but didn't quite get it all. And I think a lot of this could have been labs and things that weren't as important. But if somebody hadn't been there to help them, they probably would have not realized that they were up against the support clock. And if they had a problem, they might have had a real issue trying to get help with it. This chart just gives us a little bit better detail of what's going on in the environment. One thing that's a little troubling here is they've got a lot of different ESX builds, and that can cause sprawl in your environment. It can make it, things can happen when everything's not the same. So when you have different stuff, it adds to the complexity, and there's more chances that things can go wrong. So we want to make sure that we're up to date and everything is kept kind of the same, and it makes it more stable. So we have other tools that can help us do that. We actually have a tool that was written by a TAM. He came from, I think he came from General Electric, and he had problems with engineers that would go update a host, but they wouldn't get it up to date like the rest of the cluster. It would be behind. So he actually wrote some tools for the TAM org, and we can look at firmware levels, drivers, and all kinds of things and tell, hey, you've got 3 hosts that have the wrong or a driver in it, or the firmware is out of date on these 3 hosts. We can do things like that and see configuration drift. That's very helpful to keep a stable environment. This chart here really is just to show us what is in your environment. For example, if you wanted to automate, make templates in your automation, you could look here and say, well, I've got a lot of Windows 10 and 7. Well, this is because they had VDI. They still had some 7 laying around, only, well, they're down to 1,000 machines at that time. But you would probably look and say, well, server 16 is our go-to because we've got a lot of 2012, but we're getting off of that. We're going to go to 16. Now, in modern days, you'd probably be saying 19. But if you look at the distribution of what you've got, you'd probably want to say, the most popular is four CPUs, probably 8 gigs of RAM for a server. I think this was the desktops. So you could pick which one you wanted to make a template for first to cover your most used types of machines. So it would cover the biggest cross section of what you had. Now we could also filter this out if we wanted to and take the VDI environment out of here. So that, there's about 7,000 plus virtual machines in their VDI environment that could kind of skew this data. VDI is a little bit different beast. We would just filter that out when we made the report. Here's some release management insights. This is super handy. Almost everywhere I go, every customer I've worked with, their VMware tools are out of date. It plagues everyone. I haven't really seen it cause a huge problem, which is amazing because the tools, it just sits there and works. It's amazingly stable, but there are bug reports. There's vulnerabilities occasionally that we find in it. And it's also good with the operating systems to keep the tools up to date. There's a lot of ways to do that, but a lot of customers don't know how. They'll build the machine, the server team will build it, they'll hand it out to the apps team. The apps team keeps Windows and their app updated, but they don't know it's a virtual machine. They don't know anything about it. So they never upgrade VMware tools. The server team doesn't go upgrade tools because it's not their machine anymore. They concentrate on the infrastructure, and tools falls through the cracks and it just becomes old, years old. It never presents a problem for them, but when it does, it could be a major problem because look how many need to be upgraded. They're really old. There's 9,000 machines in there with old tools. So if there's a problem with an old tools version, it's going to be a big problem. So there's a lot of ways to fix this. Not every customer is the same. So we can help you make a solution to keep that up to date. This shows the different ones over time and what's happened with them. This also shows your guest distribution of what you're running in the environment. Here's some other things like this snapshot. Is it good to know? Now this happens to be again in their VDI environment. You can see here, and snapshots in VDI aren't uncommon. In fact, they're kind of welcome because that's how VDI runs. So this saying there's seven snapshots may or may not really be a bad thing. And that's why we would filter VDI out if we were just looking at the servers, or if we were just looking at VDI, we could filter the servers out. There's also some things, how many thin provision machines they have, VMs on per data store, VMs that are off or suspended. There's some snapshot data in here that tells you how many machines are off. And I think this customer actually had hundreds of machines that weren't even running, just sucking up disk space, and they were running out of disk space. So when we looked at the reports, we said, well, why are you have all these things thick provisioned, sucking space, but you're not using them? If you don't need them, move them off to other storage or just blow them away. And they recovered a bunch of storage and saved some headaches. They had some contention going on, and that helped them out. Again, they don't use Site Recovery Manager, so there's no data here. But if you guys did, it would report here, and we could tell what was going on with SRM. And then this is the last slide, actually. It's just a blow up of one of the charts that was in a previous page, but the customer, for whatever reason, absolutely loved this picture. They wanted this every month. Management took it. They reviewed it in their meetings. I don't know exactly why this was so appealing to them, but it gave them the information they needed in a very concise way that management could understand and they could discuss. And their big key button on this one was the CPU usage and how much they were using in their different areas. They're hardly using anything, but they wanted to make sure that they had capacity. That was a real big deal for them. So they didn't run things very hot. They had a pretty big environment. What we did do is work with this customer to make them realize that they're not running things very hard. And as long as they have redundancy in places, they should run things a little hotter. And they spend a lot of money on vSphere licenses, and some of that wasn't necessary. They could cut their host count down, they could cut their CPU count down, their socket level, save quite a bit of money, and still have the same performance and redundancy that they had before. So their choice was to stop adding hardware and to stop purchasing more licensing until they filled the environment that they had. And until they got this report, they didn't realize what they were doing. They had no way to quantify this. So that's just something we did with this customer. That's just one thing that a TAM does. We have many tools, health check tools, the insight tool that the TAM I told you about wrote that can look at firmware and try and network settings, NIC settings, all kinds of virtual settings to make sure that you're consistent in the environment so you don't have problems. But that's the last slide for me. So Cam, I can pass it back to you.
Well, I'm guessing, Bob, a common question from the attendees will probably be, how often do you see that or kind of notice that sort of bloat that you talked about at the end there when you go in and run these assessments? Like, how often do people have that opportunity to kind of, plan better for hardware refreshes or kind of stop that bloat on the software side? How often do you help people through that?
Actually, quite often. Now, every organization is different, so TAMs are kind of a Swiss Army knife. What we're talking about doing here might work really well in some places. It might not be of interest in another, but there'd be something else that was of interest. Usually, you'll find in the larger environments, they try to watch their environment closer because obviously it's more expensive. So they keep an eye on it. There's budgetary reasons, and they have people to do that for them. In the smaller environments, a lot of times there isn't the budget to have the tools to watch for this kind of thing, and it trips them up. That causes problems. So that's why we have so much data in this report, so that we can look at whatever it is that fits your environment. Now, this was a larger environment. We could go back. I think they had 1,000. How many hosts did they have in here? I'm going to get embarrassed because I don't remember how many they had. They had a lot of hosts. Only 388. It wasn't that big. So there's 388 hosts in the environment. They had 10,000 VMs, but they had lost sight of sizing, and they didn't have a good way to measure it. Now, in smaller environments, you might find that configuration drift is a real problem, and it can cause issues. A lot of times in smaller environments, people have to wear many hats. They have to do a lot of things, so they can't pay attention to the settings inside vSphere. They get it going, and if it's working, they don't mess with it. They leave it alone. Well, it doesn't mean it's right. So in a lot of environments, especially some where they're maybe a bit smaller, the health checks are super handy because it points out things that may not be configured to best practice. That tool that I told you about has been super handy with customers because even VMware health checks don't pull that information out. Vendor tools don't pull all that information out and put it in one location. So we use this data a lot. I hope that answers your question. We use it all the time. And this customer did it every month and reviewed it.
Yeah, I think that does answer the question. So, I mean, being able to do it every month is a probably a luxury and a goal that lots would have, but may or may not be able to do. But especially as licensing refreshes and new projects and things come up, this would probably be a good best practice for people to take advantage of, right?
Sure. Oh yeah. Some customers, we've actually found they utilize their hardware so low that they have enough to build a DR site just by right sizing what they have. So their dreams come true, they're over provisioned. Doesn't happen everywhere, but it can. And without a TAM, I didn't write this program. We had TAMs that actually did. His name was Seth Tackett. He built this for us, and it's all the TAMs use it now. It's a thing we all use. It's supported by the TAM org, and without the TAM writing this, customers don't get this data. You'd have to write the metrics and crunch the data yourself. But having a TAM, this is one thing we can bring to the table to help with.
And this report will then show you what your environment looks like and what needs to happen to your environment so it can grow and have the scalability of what a virtual environment is supposed to do. Usually, organizations they're fighting the fires day to day. They're dealing with the day-to-day stuff, the IT projects, and they stand up the environment. And then, okay, it's up, it's running, it's doing what it needs to do for me, but I don't have time to go back to make sure that the environment has the scalability that it should have for a virtual environment, or the security. And that's a big thing that's happening, that your environment needs to be secure. So with this report, it can show you, quote unquote, the potholes that needs to get fixed or upgraded, or like Bob mentioned, VMware tools. Those are something that gets forgotten because the VM works, the virtual machine works, it's up and running, it's doing databases or whatever that VM is supposed to be doing. But tomorrow I have a problem with that VM because of performance. And it could be a simple thing of the VM tools or the virtual hardware not being updated. With this report, it can show you the VMs that have the tools and the virtual hardware not up to date. And it can say, okay, you have 10 VMs that doesn't have these drivers and it needs to be updated.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's a lot of good information. This is just one of the tools that TAMs use. There's several similar to this and other things. So
Is this the same assessment that you guys would, if somebody's thinking about, starting to move stuff out to the cloud, or, how do we right size the VMware implementation and maybe move some things, whether to VMC or to a native cloud provider where it makes sense? Is this the same kind of information that you provide, or are there other assessments, or are there other pieces that you'd bring in?
there's other pieces we would bring in for that. Of course, we could use anything in here that we found useful. We'll use any tool, anything at our exposure, we'll use it. We don't have any qualms using a tool. If you've got a TAM and we have a tool you need, then we'll use it. We don't hold the tools back, but moving to the cloud it's a little bit different of a beast. What we usually see is management. I don't know what they do. They must read an article on the back of a magazine on the airplane as they're driving home and say everybody's going to the cloud. We got to move to the cloud. Why aren't we in the cloud? Let's get in the cloud. But when you ask them, well, what do you want to move and why? They don't know. They just want to be in the cloud. So there's a lot of education around moving to the cloud. You don't have to manage the infrastructure behind the virtual machines, but boy, you better manage those virtual machines absolutely perfectly, or they will eat you alive in hosting costs. We've actually seen customers moving back on-prem, some very large ones actually pulling out of the clouds and they're ordering all new hardware and bringing it back into the data center. And that doesn't mean that's the right move for everyone. Sometimes the cloud is a wonderful place to be. It's a great tool, but you've got to understand your workloads and you have to understand your use case, or you'll make a wrong step and it will be a very expensive step and you won't realize it until it's too late. You're already in the cloud and you're kind of stuck there. Now, that's one advantage to using VMware. When you do go to the cloud, it really doesn't cost that much more, but your options are open. It's not a roach hotel. Once you're out there, you can get back or you can move somewhere else. The clouds change their features. They change what you can use. They add and change things. And as they do, you can just drag and drop your stuff to another cloud and use the stuff that they have. So it really depends on your workloads, and it always has. That's never changed. The use case and the workloads are what really should dictate what you do in your environment. Not, I want to run my stuff in this. That doesn't really make any business sense. But it does if you look at what your workloads are. And we can help you look at that. We've gone through it. We have customers that they've done it right. We have customers that have done it wrong. We have customers that stumble. We have customers that just pop right into a cloud. They're just fine and everything works. And that's the beauty of having someone that's with the manufacturer, that's with VMware, that can help you learn from what other people have done. Why make the mistakes yourself if you can have somebody that can show you what those potholes are and help you keep from making them? And again, it's not our job to do it for you. We don't come in and build you a cloud and start moving your stuff. The TAM's goal is to pull up alongside and work with you as you go. Understand how your business works, understand what you need, kind of be a buffer between sometimes the engineers and the management, keep management's head in the right direction, and make sure that the engineers understand what that direction is. A lot of times we see a disconnect there. And it's handy to have somebody that can bridge that gap and help organizations move forward without all the confusion of, why are we doing this? Well, management has a darn good reason for doing it, but the engineers don't understand what that is because management can't articulate that well. So it's the cloud is a great thing if you use it properly. It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, and any helping hand, I imagine, is going to make them more successful in getting there. So I think that's a big value point of the TAM program too.
Yeah.
So we have about 15 minutes left here, and I know Bob, you work with Jason Weaver out there in the state of Michigan, and we're going to touch a little bit on some of the work that Jason's done with the TAM program to show, some of the real life aspects here, right? Anything you want to tee up, Bob, or should we just head over to Jason?
Well, I can tee Jason up and he can take over. It's Jason is actually, he's one of my customers. I've worked with him for, well, a long time, 7 years. He has a large VDI environment. As a TAM, we helped him architect and design it. Once it was designed, we helped implement it. And he did all the work. He did all the heavy lifting himself. So, and working for a state government and building an environment that can support what that thing supports, that's a monumental task. So when he talks about what he's done and what he's building and how it works, we need to remember this is in an enormous environment with layer upon layer upon layer of silos that have to be maneuvered, and things have to be built in a very specific way to function in an environment like that. So not everybody's environment will be that difficult, but Jason did it, and he did it. We designed it on whiteboards and Applebee's dining tables, moving salt and pepper shakers around to know who was what and which part of the software would do which here and there. And once we had the concept and the use cases down, we set to building it. So, Jason, would you mind maybe introducing yourself and tell us a little bit about your environment?
Sure. Yeah, I didn't create a big presentation or anything, and I assigned all my bullet points to Bob to create, and apparently he's used most of them for his presentation.
Oh no, sorry.
The virtualization and TAM services, along with the virtualization services at the state, goes back around 15 years or so now. Started out with a single working manager and half an FTE's time. I was lucky enough to be able to move in under that manager as their first full-time employee back in the ESX 3 to ESX 3.5 days. So yeah, it's been a while, and it's been a very interesting journey. I wear multiple hats at the state. I kind of do a little bit of involvement with our enterprise architecture teams, or solution design as it's called now. But my primary role is under enterprise virtualization services. I am, I think, still titled as one of the cloud architects, but essentially most of my time is spent working in the VMware space for server virtualization, and for EUC side of things now running Horizon, VIDM, NSX on top of VxRails. But again, having the time invested at the state, I still get pulled into a lot of different areas and have to switch hats here and there.
So what would you say, Jason? What would you say is you get out of the TAM program? What's the most useful part of it? I'll say, Jason and I have not talked about this. We did not rehearse it. So this is scary for me because he can say anything he wants to right now. What is it you like about the TAM service, and what advantage of it is it for you?
Well, again, since the TAM program goes back 15 years, it varies, right? And it has kind of changed with the times and with the role of the person who was in the TAM seat and what we needed at the times. Starting out when we had, an agency who had bought their own hardware, they fronted the money specifically for the VMware licensing, and we were just essentially offering support for their virtualized environment, much like we would offer for a physical environment. of servers, because that's what the state was used to doing back then. At that point in time, we were really using the TAM services to help us create best practices, to work with our management staff and education of executives at the state of what virtualization really was, what we wanted to use it for, and how it would help the state as a whole moving forward. Moving from having, 20 virtual machines into the aspect we have a couple hundred hosts now in a active data center environment that spans between Lansing and Grand Rapids, which is an hour or so in driving distance from one city to the other. And we can vMotion machines now from the one to the other live. And now we've moved into, as your role has been as our TAS or TAM, has been in the architecture, the design, the pilot, and the production of our EUC offering. Trying to figure out, when we don't have anybody giving us who our target customers are going to be, taking the book that has been written about VDI, tearing out the first 2 chapters and ignoring them, and then still trying to come up with something that'll work in action. And we've been able to do that. So now, as you've mentioned, that has been a long journey of, sitting down, looking at best practices from VMware, and comparing those to what our needs may be, because as everybody knows, best practices are just that, right? It's best practices. It's not what your end design is going to look like. It's not a concrete answer for what you need and what's going to work in your environment. But it's a very good end goal to not get tripped up along the journey of, moving from what you can possibly get out day one to what you'll end up with for a production environment. And so, as you mentioned, we sat down, we've discussed it on whiteboards, and sometimes you just have to get out of the office, sit down at a restaurant, have an Arnold Palmer or a lemonade or some waters, whatever, and then, use your salt and pepper shakers and ketchup bottles as examples of, so if we did this, how is that going to work in this way? And then, grabbing napkins and drawing stuff out, and not letting the waitress take your napkins away that have all of your secret designs on them, so that you can go back to the office and put it on the whiteboard and then redesign it and get tripped up over the next thing that comes out there. But from a TAM program standpoint, all the things that you've mentioned before, right? The TAM reports are great for both, our enterprise virtualization side of things and our EUC side of things. Skyline has been very helpful, because if anybody's opened up support tickets with VMware, we know that they've asked for logs, and they will ask for logs again, even if you might have, with them or uploaded them to the wrong ticket. Skyline's a great resource for being able to push logs from your environment directly to the ticket that it may need to be assigned to, or give support access to pull logs. There's still components to Skyline that we haven't even touched on yet, for looking at best practices and other reports that are continually being added to the Skyline environment. And let Bob loose in Skyline and see what he can run for you next week.
So do you think it's been handy, Jason, having the updates, as updates are released, we inform you of those and
See,
keep you
there
up
you
to
go, pulling up a bullet point of mine that's way down in my list.
date?
Yes. It has been very beneficial for us to have somebody that's outside of our environment, but familiar with our environment, looking over our shoulder. Whether it be, while we're trying to troubleshoot something, when we're looking at running through upgrades, leveraging the TAM resource as a voice of reason that's external to us. I'm not exactly sure why, but some people won't listen to their employees the same way that they listen to an external resource that they're paying maybe a little bit more money for. whether it be contractors or TAMs or even some of your salespeople, maybe. But merit resources, edge resources, the edge program is we have one in Michigan that's similar, that started out on the education side of things called Merit, and we've spoke at Merit before, kind of going over similar examples of what we're talking about today. But having that external voice of reason from the vendor who knows what we do, hands-on keyboard guys, what we do from a day-to-day basis, what our environment looks like, some of the trouble points that we're having in the environment. And when we're asked, it kind of sounds like we're complaining or whatever, or we're dealing with internal politics. But when, vendor resources are asked the same questions, some of their answers may be better prepared than our answers are, or management or executives may look at it, slightly different, or maybe it's just as a second opinion. And then, dealing with the internal policies that we have and how other people in other organizations have also dealt with them, which in my mind is one of the biggest things about the TAM program that we've leveraged at the state, is the ability for them to help us network and talk to and have been part of other implementations that may have been different than ours, but might have had different gotchas that we didn't, or the gotchas that they had, they can bring to the table and say, hey, don't do this. I had somebody do that. This is how we fixed it. Or, that's not something I've thought of before. Let me bounce that off of, these guys who might not be your TAM customers, but might be another TAM's customers who might be in another state doing a similar thing, or might be in a different county doing another thing. But the networking that the TAMs have provided for us at the state over the years that we've had them has been enormous, whether it be at VMworld or Explore, Edge events, Merit events. We've actually had our TAMs work with other VMware people to put together special speaking events at other VMware events within our state, whether they're part of the local VMware user groups, the VMUGs, or Merit or Edge events. They've gotten us in contact with other, K-12 higher ed, state, healthcare, law enforcement, or even people we've been able to talk to in the federal workspace, which is not an easy thing to do, to get somebody that is an acronymed location, giving some general, but speaking about their environment and how they've implemented some stuff, has been extremely beneficial, because everybody's got their own little requirements that they've got to do depending on what type of environment they set up. At the state, we deal with most, if not all of them. We technically don't have to deal with FedRAMP because we can't run federal workloads, but we still get very close, and we deal with NIST and PCI and IRS and HIPAA. And one of our previous TAMs worked with us very, very early on in that process, and worked through that process and kind of ended up specializing in dealing with those type of audits and settings, and ended up taking and helping many other organizations on that. But every now and then we'll still get caught in something and not being able to figure something out. And, we'll still reach out to him through VMware or, through Bob and the TAM to hunt down somebody else to figure out why, a certain component is not, passing, one type of a scan or another through one software suite or another, and help us resolve those issues so that we can remain compliant and our data stays secure, and we don't have to deal with audits, failing, or worrying about our residents' data being exposed and ending up in the newspaper.
All right. Well, thank you, Jason.
Yeah, that was great. Thanks for the rundown on the TAM relationship and kind of how you've developed and leveraged that program in Michigan over the years. We really appreciate it. And thanks for the shout out for Edge and Merit as well. Merit is one of our really cool peer organizations out there doing great work with the education community out in Michigan. So we definitely look to them, and I think they look to us a little bit and kind of check in on the different programs we're offering, and make sure we're taking care of everybody out there. So we appreciate you joining us and spending the time walking through that, Jason.
Of course, and if there's any follow-up questions, feel free to shoot an email over or have another meeting, and I'll do my best to get you some answers.
Yeah, that's great. I'll make sure we make that offer to everybody as we follow up. Like I said, we will be able to get the recording out to everybody and follow up here to make sure that you can go back and reference the content that you saw today. We also we had one question come in around pricing. Bob was nice enough to answer that in chat on the Q&A panel, but there is a cost associated with the TAM program. Is it an annual or month-to-month commitment? We can be flexible about how we offer that under the Edge procurement contract that we have. I don't have the pricing right now off the top of my head. But what I can say is that the cost for a TAM under the Edge agreement as compared to sort of the open market rate that fluctuates is a huge value right now, and definitely represents somewhere where that Edge program for procurement really can drive lots of discounting for you. So I'd encourage you to reach out to one of the Edge team members that you have close contact with. If you want to follow, I'll reach out and follow up to this session if you want to respond there, and we can get you with the right people. Aaron Brink and Michelle Ferraro and the Edge team are great resources to start that conversation. So please, if you have any questions around pricing, around how you get access to the TAM program, certainly let us know and we'll be happy to help.
And I posted a couple things in chat. VMware's given training away the prerequisites for becoming VMware certified. And then they also have a coupon to get the exam voucher. So I put that in chat. Make sure you take advantage of it. It's the class you would need to take if you wanted to get your VCP.
It's really cool. So Bob, let's make sure we follow up offline here, because it looks like that went to hosts and panelists, but we'll make sure we send that in the follow-up email. So just if you send those over to me, I'll package them up with the recording, and we'll get that out to everybody.
Yeah, okay. I guess I sent the wrong people. Sorry about that.
All good. I know it's sometimes the Zoom gets a little tricky, but yeah, I think this was a great session here today. Cam, Bob, Jason, thanks so much for your time. We really, really appreciate it. If there are any questions and follow-up that kind of come up in the next few days after the session, as folks have a chance to kind of digest and think about the TAM program a bit more, we'll make sure we get them over, and we'll distribute those answers too. So, again, thanks so much for your time presenting to the Edge Consortium members today. Thanks to everybody who joined the call and listened in. We really appreciate you spending your afternoon with us. And with that, I think that brings us to the end of today's program. So thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.